My name is Layla Whitmore. I was 29 when I joined Strategist Consulting Group, a mid-sized firm in downtown Chicago, known more for its charm than its diversity. I remember my first day so clearly. My palms were sweating, my resume folded perfectly, in my bag, and my charcoal gray hijab pinned in a neat professional wrap. The receptionist, a blonde woman in her late 40s, looked up and smiled as I walked in. But it wasn't real, not the kind of smile that welcomes you. It was the kind that measures you. "You're here for the marketing analyst position?" she asked, already glancing past me like someone more suitable might be walking in behind. "Yes," I said, holding my ground. "I'm Layla." That smile again, thin, tense. "Have a seat. HR will be with you shortly." I'd been in rooms like this before, where the silence around your headscarf was louder than any slur. Where people thought not saying something was the same as not judging, but I had a plan. I didn't come here to be liked. I came here to win. The interview was clinical, as if my credentials, Ivy League degree, fluent in 3 languages, internship at a top global firm, were unexpected. Still, I got the job. At first, I tried to believe in the company. The walls were decorated with posters about inclusion, bring your whole self to work, and diverse voices lead innovation. But those words rang hollow when I noticed who got invited to brainstorms and who didn't. Spoiler, it wasn't me. The real moment it hit me was during a Monday team meeting. I pitched a high-performing campaign strategy for a luxury skincare brand. Clean visuals, inclusive messaging, targeted KPIs. It had everything. My manager smiled, nodded, then assigned the project to Aaron. Aaron, fresh out of grad school, 2 months in, didn't even take notes during the pitch. I looked around the room. No one spoke up. That night I walked home in the rain, not because I didn't have an umbrella, but because I needed the cold on my skin. Something had shifted in me. I wasn't going to keep begging for respect. If they didn't want me to shine under their roof, I'd build my own. The following weeks were a quiet war. Every morning I showed up at 8:45 sharp, perfectly tailored slacks, heels clicking with intention, reports printed and tabbed. But no matter how prepared I was, it was as if I walked through that office invisible. Unless they needed something fixed, or translated, or presented to the client last minute, because Layla, you're just so polished under pressure. I smiled, always, that professional smile. The one women of color wear like armor. Then came the email. Subject: Client Image Guidelines from Marcus Shaw, Director of Accounts, to me, only me. "Hey Layla, we just got feedback from one of our legacy clients. They love your work. Seriously. Outstanding reports. But for the upcoming presentation, let's maybe consider a more neutral appearance. You know, client-facing optics can be a little sensitive sometimes." "Appreciate you." Neutral appearance? My hands trembled as I reread it. Not a word about my slides. Not a single concern with my campaign structure. Just optics. It wasn't the first time I'd been coded out of someone's comfort zone. But this time, they had the audacity to put it in writing. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I saved the email in a folder titled, "Just in Case." That same day, during the team huddle, I watched as Aaron, again, was given a leadership role in a campaign I'd mapped out over 2 weekends. She smiled at me across the table, sympathetic, but said nothing. I realized something chilling. Then, this wasn't negligence, it was a pattern, and patterns are systems, and systems can be dismantled. That night, I opened my laptop and started searching. Not for jobs, for licenses. If they were going to erase me from the table, I'd build a whole new table and buy the damn building it sat in. The next time Marcus passed by my desk, he flashed me his usual smirk, the kind that said, "You're lucky to be here." I smiled back, not because I meant it, but because I was already gone, mentally, emotionally, and soon, physically. At night, I started building something no one saw coming. I'd spent years helping brands tell their stories. Now, I was going to use every ounce of that skill to build my own. I registered a business under my middle name, Amina Collective. Design, branding, strategy, targeted storytelling for diverse audiences, the very thing Stratus kept pretending to champion but never really hired for. By day, I played the game, nodded at meetings, smiled at insults dressed as compliments. By night, I was building a future so bold it scared even me. I started with small businesses, Black-owned coffee shops, halal skincare startups, bilingual therapists. I helped them look like $1 million for free. They offered to pay. I refused. What I needed more than cash was proof, a portfolio, results, word-of-mouth power. And I got it. 2 months in, I got an email from a woman named Tanisha who ran a women-led tech nonprofit. She said, "I heard what you did for Noor Skincare. They said you're a genius with branding. We've been looking for someone like you. Can we talk?" I remember staring at that email and feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Seen, wanted, respected. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't gloat. I just sat in my kitchen, lights off, screen glowing in the dark, and smiled for real this time, because I wasn't building a side hustle. I was building an exit strategy, and they had no idea. 3 months after launching Amina Collective, I got a call I wasn't expecting. Julie Henders, VP of Marketing at Behringer & Co., one of Stratus Consulting's longest-standing luxury clients, had somehow gotten my number. "Layla," she said, voice crisp, "someone from Noor Skincare forwarded your work. I'm impressed. Are you available for freelance?" Pause. My heart slammed against my ribs. Behringer was one of our clients. I'd worked on their campaigns. I'd written their launch playbooks. But my name? Nowhere on the credits. I steadied my voice. "Yes," I said calmly. "I'm available." We set a call for Friday. I spent every night that week reworking their old decks, the ones I had secretly saved from my time at Stratus. I knew their brand better than they did. I'd been silently shaping it for years. The call was short, direct. Julie said, "Your understanding of our tone and our core customers is unmatched. I'm honestly surprised you're not still with Stratus." I bit my tongue. They didn't see the value, I said simply. By Monday, I had my first 5-figure contract. Behringer was jumping ship. When the news hit Stratus, that Behringer and Comer had cut ties and taken their marketing elsewhere, chaos broke out. Emails were flying. Slack was on fire. Marcus stormed into the Monday meeting, red-faced, demanding to know how a startup no one had heard of stole their flagship client. He was there, sitting in the back, watching. He didn't know. He didn't know yet, but he would. The Stratus offices were buzzing. No one said it out loud, but everyone knew. Behringer was gone, and nobody could explain how it happened. No one except me. I kept my head down as Marcus slammed shut his office door hard enough to rattle the glass walls. Inside, he was probably drafting a PR excuse, blaming budget cuts, creative differences, anything but the truth. Because the truth was sitting 10 feet away, calmly typing up an onboarding plan for her own client. 2 days later, Marcus held a mandatory team meeting. We gathered in the glass conference room, beige chairs, fake smiles, that faint smell of overbrewed coffee and fear. He paced at the front like a general who had already lost the war. "I don't know who's feeding our clients poison," he snapped, "but I'll find out. From now on, no more remote work. No more Slack channels without senior oversight. We tighten up. We circle the wagons. Are we clear?" Everyone nodded, but the silence was thick. They weren't afraid of losing clients. They were afraid of me, and they didn't even know it yet. I watched Erin nervously sip her coffee. She'd always smiled too easily in meetings, always spoken, a beat too loud, trying to fit into a world that was never going to let someone like her actually lead. I didn't hate her. I pitied her. She had sold herself to the system. I was burning mine down. That night, I went home, kicked off my heels, and laid out the real numbers. $14,500 from the Behringer contract, $7,800 from 2 new wellness clients referred through Tanisha, $2,100 in pending proposals, $0 in debt. It wasn't just side income anymore. It was enough to live. More importantly, it was enough to leave. But I wasn't going to just leave. I was going to let them feel it. So I did something bold. I updated my LinkedIn headline. Founder, Amina Collective, inclusive strategy for the next generation of brands. I knew people from Stratus would see it. I knew they'd start to whisper. But I wasn't hiding anymore. I was the ghost in their boardroom. And soon, I'd be the reason clients stopped calling back. 2 days after I updated my LinkedIn, the emails started. At first, they came from people I barely remembered, people I'd once shared elevator rides with, exchanged stiff smiles by the coffee machine. Now they were suddenly full of curiosity. Hey Layla, just saw your new title. Amazing. Hope everything's good on your end. Congrats on the new venture. Would love to connect sometime soon. I smiled at the screen. These weren't messages of celebration. They were messages of fear. They had heard. Not from me, but from clients, from the network, from whispers. By the end of that week, I got another call. This time, it was from Monarch Home and Living, a high-end furniture and lifestyle brand that Stratus had been aggressively courting for over a year without success. We heard you're the one behind Behringer's rebrand, the woman said. We've worked with Stratus before. We weren't impressed, but if you're open to it, we'd rather work with you directly. Another one gone before Stratus even knew they had them. I closed the deal in 4 days. On Monday morning, as I walked through Stratus's glass doors, I passed the client's success team. 2 of them went silent mid-conversation. One of them looked straight at me and turned away. Kept walking. In the next all-hands meeting, Marcus was unusually quiet. He didn't yell, didn't threaten. He just stood there, looking at the dashboard of lost contracts. It's like we're bleeding clients and no one can find the wound, he muttered. Except the wound was sitting 10 feet away. Wearing a beige hijab and soft lipstick, silently outlining her exit plan on Google Sheets. I wasn't their employee anymore. I was their reckoning. That night, I treated myself to a quiet dinner. I sat alone, phone on silent, watching the city, outside sparkle with potential. What started as survival had become strategy. And what was once a strategy was now a movement. Amina Collective wasn't just my brand. It was every woman who'd ever been asked to tone herself down to make others feel comfortable, and I was just getting started. I stared at the company badge in my hand, a simple laminated rectangle with Layla Whitmore in bold letters, under the Stratus logo. It used to mean stability. Now it just felt small. It was Thursday morning. I had a call with Monarch Home and Living in 2 hours. Another pitch with a global cosmetics brand the day after. A brand new logo from my design team, ready for final approval. And yet, I was still sitting in a cubicle, pretending to be invisible. No, more. I opened my browser, typed a short resignation letter, and saved it as a draft. I wasn't going to just email it. I wanted them to feel every word. I walked into Marcus's office at 4:57 p.m., just before the end of the day. Just before the end of my time there. He looked up, surprised. Layla, something wrong? I handed him a printed copy of the letter. He read the first line. His face fell. You're resigning? I nodded. He blinked. Is this about the Behringer situation? Because if it is... No, I cut in. It's about all of it. Every ignored pitch. Every time you handed my work to someone else. Every time I was told to dim myself down. He shifted uncomfortably. I'm not trying to make this difficult, I added. I'm just done. Then I did something that stunned even me. I slid a business card across his desk. White, minimal, elegant. Layla Whitmore founder, Amina Collective strategy for the underrepresented. Marcus stared at it like it was a loaded weapon. I think we're done here, I said. I turned, walked out. Not just from the office, but from that entire version of myself. That night, I threw the Stratus badge into the trash and opened a bottle of sparkling grape juice I'd been saving. Alone in my apartment, I danced in my socks. Not to celebrate leaving, but to welcome the Layla who had been waiting all along, the Layla who didn't need permission anymore. Within a week of leaving Stratus, my inbox exploded. Clients were finding me. Not through ads. Not through outreach. Through word of mouth, the most powerful currency in business. One morning I opened Instagram and saw something that made me pause. A carousel post from Stratus. Behind the brand, our latest work with Monarch Home and Living. Except, the actual campaign, the one Monarch approved and launched, looked nothing like that. They were bluffing, trying to reclaim credit for something I'd built after I left. That was the moment I knew. They weren't just bleeding clients anymore. They were bleeding credibility. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I went public. I posted a short video on LinkedIn. Just me, no makeup, no flashy edit, looking into the camera. For years, I was told I didn't fit the image. So I built my own. This is for every woman who's ever been asked to shrink. I'm not shrinking anymore. Amina Collective. Unapologetically visible by noon, it had over 12,000 views. By night, it passed 40K. The comments were full of people, especially women, sharing stories of being overlooked, dismissed, muted. And now, they were following me. The next morning, a former intern from Stratus messaged me privately. They're panicking. Marcus is holding emergency meetings. People are calling you the face of corporate rebellion. It's kinda legendary. I smiled. Not out of, revenge, but because they were finally saying my name, not as a footnote in someone else's pitch, but as the author of the future. My name was everywhere now. Marketing blogs were sharing my post. Small business newsletters were quoting me. People were tagging Amina Collective like we were a Fortune 500 brand, when in reality, I was still working out of my apartment with 3 freelancers and a vision. But power doesn't always come from size. It comes from clarity. And I finally had it. One Friday afternoon, I sat across from Amira, my new project manager, a Somali-American mother of 2 who'd left her last job after being passed over for a raise 3 years in a row. They said I didn't have leadership presence, she told me. I looked at her as she outlined a campaign structure in under 10 minutes that would have taken Stratus 2 weeks to mess up. You are leadership, I said, and I meant it. That became a rule at Amina Collective. No one here shrinks. We don't blend in. We build new colors. Meanwhile, Stratus was falling apart in slow motion. Clients were exiting quietly. Some demanded full audits on past work. A few, the bold ones, even emailed me directly. We worked with Stratus for 3 years and never felt seen. Can we talk? It was poetic. I'd once sat in a windowless meeting room, pitching ideas no one listened to. Now I was fielding calls from CEOs asking me to teach their teams how to speak to people who didn't look like them. And then came the invitation that changed everything. A major university, the one I'd graduated from with honors, the same. One that once sent me generic diversity emails and nothing more, reached out. They wanted me to speak. Not just as an alum, as a thought leader. We believe your journey represents the kind of future our students need to see. I sat with that for a long time, because it wasn't just an invitation, it was an acknowledgement that my visibility was power. And that power didn't come from fitting in. It came from refusing to. The night before the keynote, I stood in front of the mirror and tied my hijab slowly, deliberately, not soft. Not apologetic, elegant, strategic, strong. Then I whispered something I'd never said out loud. They tried to make me invisible. Now I'm what they can't stop seeing. The university auditorium was larger than I remembered. High ceilings, tiered seats, 1,000 quiet eyes watching the podium where I now stood, not as a student, not as an intern begging for opportunity, but as a CEO, a Black Muslim woman with a hijab and her own company. I clutched the wireless mic as the dean introduced me. And now, please welcome, a voice reshaping the future of branding and leadership, Layla Whitmore. Applause. Not loud, but respectful. I took a breath and began. When I was a sophomore here, I applied for a competitive internship at a global firm. I was told, "You're brilliant on paper, but maybe tone it down. Clients might not get it." I didn't know what it was. My hijab, my tone, my silence in rooms where I was the only woman of color. They never said it directly. That's the thing about prejudice. It hides behind suggestion. The room was still. No phones, no whispering. I built Amina Collective not to fix a broken system. The system was never broken. It was built that way, to exclude, to erase, to silence. So I didn't ask for a seat at the table, I built my own. And I made sure it had mirrors, so no one could pretend we weren't there. Somewhere in the back row, I saw a professor who once told me, "Marketing isn't political." He looked uncomfortable. Good. After the speech, dozens of students came up to me. A hijabi girl whispered, "Thank you for not taking it off to get ahead." Another said, "I want to start my own agency. My advisor told me to be realistic, but you just changed that." One young man handed me his resume. "You're who I want to become." And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just revenge. It was legacy. That night, I walked alone across campus, the same sidewalks where I once lowered my voice, the same halls where I questioned if I belonged. Now, my name was on the event banners. I belonged everywhere they told me I didn't, and I was just getting started. It started with an email. Subject, urgent, consulting request, confidential. The sender, Lucille Trent, Chief Operating Officer of Stratus Consulting, my old company. I read the first line 3 times before laughing out loud. "We're undergoing a strategic brand audit and would like to explore a potential engagement with Amina Collective. They were trying to hire me." I didn't respond. Not at first. I needed to sit with it. Let it marinate. Stratus had been bleeding for months. Layoffs, PR disasters, a viral TikTok accusing the company of performative inclusivity. 3 major clients, all now mine, had publicly severed ties. Their name had gone from respected to radioactive. And now, the woman who once sat across from Marcus in those smug board meetings was their last hope. Poetic, really. I called Tanisha, now my senior brand director. Guess who just reached out? When I told her, she nearly choked on her coffee. "No way, you're not actually considering—" "I'm not sure," I admitted. Part of me wants to go in there just to see their faces. And the other part wants to let them burn. Eventually, I responded. "Hi, Lucille. Thank you for the inquiry. Amina Collective is currently at capacity, but I wish you clarity and alignment in your rebrand journey. Warmly, Layla Whitmore." No bitterness, no sarcasm, just power. Quiet, controlled power, the kind that doesn't beg to be seen anymore because it commands attention. The next morning, I posted a new case study on the Amina Collective site, Client Spotlight, Monarch Home and Living. From cultural irrelevance to inclusive luxury, how we increased engagement by 187% without erasing identity. It trended on LinkedIn within hours. Meanwhile, Stratus's website was down. A placeholder page, a logo under construction, just like their reputation. That night, I sat in my apartment, lights low, tea warm in hand. I thought of every time I'd been told to tone it down, to wait my turn, to blend in. I thought of every girl watching from the shadows, wondering if she had to change herself to succeed, and I made a vow. We don't just take back our power. We own it, loudly, softly, elegantly, fiercely, however we damn well choose. It was just a dinner party, technically, a fancy downtown gala hosted by Modern Market Media, one of the top industry groups Layla had once dreamed of getting a foot in the door with. Now, she was on their guest list, not as a +1, not as someone's assistant, but as Layla Whitmore, founder of Amina Collective. I wore deep emerald, long sleeves, statement earrings, my hijab wrapped in a way that felt like armor and crown. As I walked in, heads turned. Some in recognition, some in confusion, all in reaction. Across the room, I spotted Marcus, older, more tired than I remembered, standing with Lucille nervously, nursing a drink. They saw me. Of course they did. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. I smiled, but I didn't walk toward them. I didn't need to. Instead, I made my way to the table marked Industry Visionaries. And there was my name, printed, centered, capitalized. Layla Whitmore. Amina Collective. I traced my finger over the letters slowly, silently. Not because I needed to believe it, but because they needed to see it. A woman they once called not polished enough. Now too powerful to ignore. Throughout the evening, I was approached by CMOs, nonprofit leaders, even a representative from a European fashion house, all of them eager, all of them respectful. No one asked if I was available. They asked if I was interested, because the power dynamic had shifted, permanently. Near the end of the night, a young woman approached me, barely 23, soft curls, nervous energy. Hi. I don't want to take too much of your time. I just wanted to say, seeing you here, dressed like you, speaking like you, it made me feel like maybe there's space for me too. I smiled gently. There isn't space, I said. There's a blueprint. And you're holding the pen now. Back home, I looked out the window of my apartment. Not the one I used to cry in, but the one I built after 5 brand deals and 2 grants. The one with custom art and candles that smelled like liberation. And then I took out the old Stratus badge, still hidden in the back of a drawer, still laminated, still bearing the name I no longer answered to. I held it for a long second, then I let it fall into the trash. 6 months had passed since I left Stratus. Amina Collective now had 5 full-time employees, 2 interns, a waiting list for new clients, and an email list that had doubled every month since launch. But more than stats, there was something else I'd built: respect, fear, legacy. I was invited to speak at the Apex conference, a gathering of the most influential voices in branding, strategy, and future of work culture. It was a black stage, giant white letters glowing behind me. Visible. I stood at the center. My name is Layla Whitmore. I am the daughter of immigrants. I wear a hijab. I've been talked over, erased, overlooked. And now, I'm the one writing the strategy deck. I'm the one being studied. The applause was thunder, not because I begged for it, but because I embodied it. That night, someone tagged me in a tweet. 3 years ago, Stratus told Layla she didn't fit their brand image. Today, their ex-clients are quoting her on slides. Another tweet followed. Remember her name. You'll be using it as a case study. And then it happened. I received an anonymous envelope at the Amina office. Inside was a Stratus internal document. Title: Emergency Reputation Repair Roadmap. Jounturis. 3. Bullet point 4. Disassociate from former employees gaining online traction, e.g. Whitmore. Their voice now overshadows ours. I laughed, because they still couldn't say it out loud, but they couldn't stop writing it down. Whitmore. So I made a post that night, no caption, just a photo. Me, in my office, hijab on, sharp eyeliner, the Stratus badge burned into ash in a ceramic bowl, a sticky note on the wall behind me. You can't erase what you never understood. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about rewriting the blueprint. For every black girl told to straighten her curls, for every Muslim woman told her scarf was a barrier, for every soft voice forced into silence, my name was no longer up for debate. Say my name, I dare you to forget it.